Hi friends, so in this video I just want to go through what I showed you during the first lecture of 2D game animation, just to give you a quick recap in case you want to review the things that we did during the lecture. I'm doing this at my own PC at home, and I will start with just creating the project like I did with you. I already have the correct editor version installed. Actually have a lot of editor versions installed here. So if I click on new project, I have to select the correct one. And at the FH, at the US, we use 2022 3.35 F1. And so I will do the same. And we actually used a universal 2D template to create our project. So I click on that as well. Next, I will select a good location for my project, which I will just create here. I will call it 2DGA for now. Selected folder, I will also call my project 2DGA. You can call it whatever you like and however you want to find it. If we look at those things, connect to Unity Cloud and use Unity version control, make sure this one is not on and this one, it doesn't really matter, but I will untick that one as well and I will start creating my project. So this takes a short while, so we will see each other once my project is done loading. Welcome back. So the project loaded, and the next step I will do is I will create a short Git repository so that I can take track of what we're actually doing. In case you're interested in how that works as well, it's just so for me that we can see our progress. I have it stored under the Playgrounds Unity 2DGA for now. So I will just move to this folder, and in here I will initialize a Git repository with the git init command. And now the repository is initialized. And another thing that's very important, if you want to use Git with Unity, very important, you don't have to use Git. Just want to show you how you would do it. On GitHub, they provide a very good git ignore file for Unity, which has very sensible defaults. So I will copy that file for now. And inside my folder, I'll open VS Code, which will just take a while. Yes, I trust the authors because the author is me. And now it's important inside the actual Unity project, so not outside of the folder, but inside the folder, I can create that git ignore file and put that here. So if you want to use Git, make sure you have a sensible git ignore file. Otherwise, you are committing way too many files and it doesn't really matter. If you don't want to use Git, don't worry. It's not part of this course. It's just for me and to keep a better history of what we're doing here. So short git status, we see we added some files. I'll add it. I do a first commit. Call it initial Unity project setup. I typed this quite a lot, so my command line already knows it. Okay, but back to what we're actually doing. This is the scene, how it should look like once you are back in it and we don't have anything in there. So the first thing we did in the lecture was create a game object right now. So what I'll do is I'll right click here in the hierarchy and go onto 2D objects, sprites, and I will just add a square. So we have the square here and now, and I can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. I can use the middle mouse button to move around. I can use the right mouse button to move around. And the thing that we have here right now, it's called a sprite. It has two components on the game object, as we can see here on the right side in the inspector. There's transform which shows us its position, rotation, and scale. And then there's the sprite renderer component, which basically tells it which image to display, and the color it should have is a tint variable. Great. So the next step we did was we covered moving sprites and scaling and rotating them. There are the tools here on the left side, but there are also shortcuts to do this. So if we click on something and we press W, it goes to the move tool and we can move this sprite around somehow. Then as we see here, there's also the rotate tool. We can also get there with pressing E and can rotate our sprite. And you can always see on the top right, it changes the values there. And then there is the scale. So pressing R opens up the scale tool, and then we can make this thing bigger or smaller, scale it however we want. So in case we want to change how our sprite looks, scale it, rotate it, move it around, we can all do that either through these menus or using the shortcuts, or by just clicking on this thing and dragging those handles around. Now, the last thing we went through is if we set all those parameters and we don't like them and we want to reset, we can go the top right of the transform, click on those three dots here, and there's the reset button. If we press that, everything that we did before is gone. And yeah, so that is how a sprite works. And what we then did during the lecture is we created we created a small world using just some sprites and the color here. So if we want to change the color of a sprite, we can click on the color property and choose a color here. And we use this to create a world with some houses and a floor. And I will do this now off screen, and I'll also invite you to recap doing this and create another world for you. Just play around with creating some sprites, moving them around where you want to have them, setting some colors, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, welcome back. So I used my time to create a floor and create a house, and we can now play the game. We do that by pressing the play button on top here. And after a short load, we can see our game. So what I have here right now is a ground, and I have a house that is made out of a square and a triangle, as we can see here. But I don't really like the positioning on the screen. So to fix that, what we did is we moved the main camera. So if I click here on the camera, I can see a little preview window on the bottom right. And I can move the camera up by some value. So if I click on that position and I increase the Y value, I can do that by clicking here and dragging to the right. I can find a value where I like it, how it looks. I also see that my ground is still a little bit too narrow, so I will increase its scale to something like, I don't know, 30 for now. And now I play the game. And oh, let me check. I had it the scale up onto 1.5. That's not good. But if I set the scale onto 1 and maybe check for 16:9 aspect ratio, which would be a very usual game ratio, I can have a look at how my game would look for now. And I like the camera position. Okay. As we can see, I have a house on my ground now, but there's still some problems. First of all, I only have one house, and the house is not really connected. So if I move one of the things, it moves around. But there was a solution to that problem. As we can see here on the left side in the hierarchy, I have a square and a triangle, which are things of my house. But in this hierarchy, game objects can be parented to each other. So if I wanted to have a house as one entity, what I did was created an empty. An empty just means a game object without anything attached to it besides a transform. Everything always needs a transform. And I will call this a house. In my case, it now created this empty at a random position in the world. It always does that. So I'm in the habit of when I create an empty, I will just reset its transform so that I can be sure that I have it where I want it to be. So my house is now positioned at 0, 0, 0. And I now take my square and my triangle and drag and drop them onto the house. And as you can see here, it created this little hierarchy for us. So this house right now is one entity, and if I move it around, it moves around the whole house. So what's the advantage of this? It is just groups these objects together, which is pretty nice. I can then easily take the whole project thing and duplicate it using Control and D. So now I have a second house, and it just is a very it's a very good way of clustering things together. And an even better way was called the prefab. So a prefab is a prepared thing in our game, a prepared game object, which we could create in the following way. First, I create a folder here down in the projects in the project view and call it prefabs. The name is not important, but it is important that you keep your project clean and that you find everything. And then what I can do is take my house here, the whole game object, and I drag and drop it onto the prefabs folder. And you can see it now turned blue, which means that a prefab was created. So whenever I now want to create another house, I can just drag and drop. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. I can just drag and drop one from down here up there, and we have another prefab. So, but I already showed you before how to duplicate, so you might ask yourself, what's the advantage of this? So let me show you shortly. If we now open the prefab here and we edit anything about it, so for example, right now, I make this color a little bit more muted because that's how I like it. And I go back to the scene, it changes on every instance of that prefab. So very often, for example, we have an enemy, we have a collectible, we want all of them to be the same in the game. And we don't want to like set up every single one of them. And in case we want to change something, we don't want to change all of the instances that we have in the game, but we can just change how the prefab looks, and it will then change it everywhere. So now I will create a lot of those houses in my world, and we'll see each other once I'm done creating my houses. Okay, welcome back. What I have here is my small neighborhood, and all my houses are made out of prefabs. So I wanted to show you another thing about prefabs. If I can click on one of them and I change the color of the base, for example. So if I now want to have a blue house, as you can see, it only changes this one thing. So that is as if they were different game objects as before. But since they're a prefab, you can see it now changed to be blue here, meaning, oh, Unity knows this is a prefab and we overrode some property. So I can now do a right click on this prefab, on the color, and say, okay, I want to apply this value to all the prefabs. And now all of them are this light blue. So once again, I actually want my yellow back. So I put it on a yellow. Again, we can see it's blue here, meaning something changed. Okay, once more, now everything is blue, but I want to have it back yellow. So what I'll do is I go to one of the houses. I'll click on the color property here, put it onto yellow. Now we can see there's like this blue marking here, which shows us that it is a prefab that was changed. And I can right click here and apply it to prefab house and change it back on all of them. So there are multiple ways to edit a prefab. I prefer the one where you open it here in the menu, change something there, and it changes for every instance of the prefab. But you can also edit prefabs in scenes and then apply it onto the prefab in case you do that. Sometimes it happens that you just change something and then you later realize that it was a prefab and that you want to have it somewhere else. Okay. The next thing I wanted to do is show you how to actually now import some image assets, because working with those primitives, it's nice, you can do something, but usually we want to have some more intricate pictures that we drew. And for our course, I prepared this asset. You can use that for whatever you want. It's also on the eCampus, and I wanted to show you how to import something into your project. And for that, I create a new folder, which I call sprites. And for just adding an image into our project, I simply drag and drop that image into here. And now I have it here in the game engine. And now, if I want to have that sprite somewhere in my world, I can, for example, just drag and drop it up here, and we have a rock. But you can see that rock is rather large. So another thing that we did is change the import settings of this image. So if we click on the image here, we can see that on the right side in the inspector, which I will make a little bit bigger now, there are some import settings. And I will go through some of them right now. So we can see this rock is pretty huge right now, and I would prefer it to be exactly 1 unit high. We can see we have like this grid here, and every one of those grid lines is 1 unit in Unity. And as we can see here, right now, it is imported as being 100 pixels tall per Unity unit. And if we look down here, we can see it's a 300 by 240 pixel image. So if I now want it to be exactly 1 unit tall, I can just look at the height here, which is 240, and change this value to 240, apply that, and now it has this size that I want to have. So changing this number here tells Unity how tall this image should be in engine per pixel. That is very important if you have multiple assets that are not actually all the same ratio in pixels. For example, a rock that was drawn way bigger than another asset, and you want to have them all be treated the same. And a second thing that we have here is right now the pivot point here of this thing is completely in the middle. So right now, if I want it to be on the ground, I need to set it to a height of 0.5. We want the position 0 to be on the bottom here. So how we can do that is on the import settings, there's also a pivot point. And if I now set this to something different, for in this example bottom, that means the point of origin for this sprite will be at the bottom. So I can now apply this and we see, oh, it jumped up because it is at position 0.5. But if I now set it at exactly 0, it is on the floor, which is in this case what I wanted it to be. Now that we have a rock, we want to have something moving, and it is time to start coding. So in our next step, we're gonna go onto our assets here and create a new folder called scripts. And during class, we create first a greeter script and then an animation script, but I will fast forward a little bit and I will show you how to create a script that makes the rock move. At first, we just gonna move it right, and then later we're gonna move it between 2 points. And I will create a C# script, call it move right first, and then open it with a double click. This will take a short while. On my system, it opens in Rider. That's what I usually work with. But for this. Okay, I let my IDE load, and now we should have everything ready. So we got a start function and we have an update function here. And to make it move right, what we did is in the update function, just move it slightly to the right every frame. And how we can do that is first I just delete the start function, also delete this comment here. Update will get called every single frame, and in there we can get access to how much time passed. So we can access the game object transform by just typing transform, and then we want the position. And here we want to create a new vector 3 as the next position. And here we can just say transform.position.x. X is always the left and right thing. And we want it to move right. So we add some number here and multiply that number with the delta time in order for it to not be frame rate dependent. So for now, I will just type here 1 times time dot delta time, and we have its position on the x-axis. So now I don't want to move it around on y and z, so I can just say transform.position.y here and transform.position.z here, meaning those two values won't change. Okay, and I will also add some white space, which makes it nicer to read for me. And we see we add something here on the x position. So let's get back to our Unity editor to have a look what this did. For now it did nothing, but if we click on our rock, we can now add this move right component. We can do that here, where it says add component. If I click here and I look for move right, now there is this move right component attached to this game object. And if I now play the game by pressing the play button, we see I have a rock that's moving right. Great. So that is how we can add some simple movement to our game. Okay, and in our next step, we want our rock to move between 2 points. And one solution for that is now to create a new script, because this one is called move right. So I will just say move back and forth for now. And go in there. Right, so in this script, we will do it a little bit better, a little bit more sophisticated than before. First of all, we might want to tell the game object in what speed it should move. So if we generate a serialized field here and call this one private float speed and set it to a default value of 1f, so a floating point value, that's 1. We now have a variable called speed in our scripts that we can also change from our editor. And if I want it to move back and forth, I need to know in which direction it is moving at the beginning. So I can generate a private boolean. In C# we do that by just writing private bool, and I will call it moving right and set that one to true in the beginning. And that's basically all we need to do up here. And now to the update method. In the update method, I want to check if we are moving right. Then, in that case, we add to our transform. If we're moving right, left, we subtract from the transform. So if we're moving right, I can say transform position is a new transform position, same as before. Basically, we can copy this line of code here and just adjust it a little bit, because instead of the 1 that we put here before, we can now use the speed variable we created earlier. And in our else case, so if it is not moving right, it means that it is moving left. Now we can check the same code and subtract this part here. So now it's moving in the other direction. Okay, so that is all great, but we now also need to check if it should toggle between the moving right and the moving left. And to do that, I check first if it is moving right and its position is greater or equal to 8, which I determined to be the edge of my screen before. Then I say moving right is false, and it should now be moving to the left. And I can also add a similar statement for the other direction. So I will do that with moving, if not moving right. And transform.position.x is smaller or equal to -8. Then we switch direction by telling it that moving right is now true again. Okay, and that basically works. It's not the prettiest code, but it's a very straightforward solution. If you came up with another solution that works, that's also fine. So if you have something that works, that's fine for now. This is a simple solution. I also showed a little bit more complicated, more refined solution during class, but whatever makes the game do what you need it to do is the correct thing. So now how do we change this? I remove this script here, the moving right, and we can also just drag and drop scripts onto the add component button to add something. I will for now add a little bit more speed so that it's not that slow, and we can have a look at it. And look at it go. It's moving pretty fast, going to the right until it is at 8. Now it's moving to the left again, and it is now flip-flopping back and forth. Okay, I hope that covers at least the quick outline of what we did in the first class. If you have any questions, just write me an email or write me in the forum, or however you want to contact me. I'm always here to help, but I hope this video just helps you to recap what we did during the first class and makes it easier for you to implement your own projects. I'm looking forward to the next time when I see you. Bye.